provision wasn't going to include equality for people with disabilities. In fact, it was written in a way where it would be impossible for it to include people with disabilities gaining equality. But that changed during the patriation debate, and the only right added to the Charter of Rights during the 1980 to 82 patriation debate, the only right added during that debate was equality for people with disabilities. I had the privilege of being one of the many people who fought for that amendment. It was people like you, by their grassroots efforts, without email, without fax machines, without Twitter, and without Facebook, and without, I just learned about it, I don't know how to use it, Periscope. They won it. 10 years ago, in this very building, all three political parties rose in unison. They can't even agree on what day of the week it is, but they rose in unison to unanimously pass the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. That was because people like you fought for a decade, from 1994 to early 2005, to win the enactment and the strengthening of that law. I had the privilege of working with many, many people on the campaign that led for that legislation. And in all of these battles, they could not have been won without people like you. But the battle isn't over. We need people like you again now. Let me take a couple of minutes to lay down before you 3 ways you can help now. And I call on every single one of you to say it's not enough to march, it's not enough to cheer, it's not enough to just be supportive. It's only enough if you also act. So what can you do? Number 1, help us win the effective enforcement and implementation of the faltering Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act. The government is doing a poor job of enforcing it. We revealed that through our own freedom of information efforts, even though they promised effective enforcement. The Premier promised that she would ensure that we were on schedule for full accessibility by 2025. Well, we're not, and that doesn't just come from us, but from the independent reviews that the government itself appointed to advise it on how we're doing. The former Lieutenant Governor of Ontario, now the government's own special advisor on accessibility, David Onley, says that the unemployment rate facing people with disabilities is not only a national crisis, it's a national shame. And he said that in this very building at the 20th anniversary of the AODA movement. And he's right. We need more action. To get involved, to learn what you can do, you've got to get active in the AODA Alliance. If you don't get our email updates, come and hand me some piece of paper with your email address on this march, or email us at aodafeedback@gmail.com. aodafeedback@gmail.com. And all you got to say is sign me up. Our updates will tell you what the issues are, we'll seek your feedback, and we'll give you practical action tips. One of our core objectives is simply to get legislators who work in this building back on track with us. 10 years ago, they celebrated the passage of this act, but most of those MPPs have left politics. We need you to help us fight one member at a time, lobbying in your community, telling them your stories, and telling them it's time to get back to the promise of full accessibility. That's number 1. But number 1 is only one of 3. Number 2, you've heard that we've got a federal election going on. All the efforts I'm involved in are nonpartisan. I'm not going to tell you who to vote for, and I'm not going to tell you who to vote against. But I'm involved with a coalition called Barrier Free Canada, supported by the AODA Alliance and many others. We're trying to take the experience of accessibility legislation in this province, in Manitoba, about to be started in Nova Scotia, and for which efforts are building in British Columbia, and to take it national. You know, the U.S. Congress passed the Americans with Disabilities Act 25 years ago. Do you think it's time for Canada to catch up? So we've called on all the parties in this national election to commit to the passage of a Canadians with Disabilities Act. Well, so far, and this is nonpartisan, I am not proposing who you should vote for. So far, we've gotten commitments from the Green Party and this past week from the New Democratic Party. We are still trying to get commitments from the Liberals, from the Conservatives, who promised one in '06 but didn't deliver it yet, and from the Bloc Québécois. So far, none of those parties have made a commitment. We are busy tweeting every candidate. One of them, I think, is here. Is Adam Vaughn here? Yes. Hey, Adam.